Hello, I'm Debbie Nipschild, Interim Vice President of Business Administration at Green River College.
And I'm Derek Brandis, Vice President for Instruction.
Green River College is experiencing similar financial challenges as other colleges in the state of Washington. As the state's budget has declined and the demand on remaining resources has increased, colleges are experiencing extensive cuts over the last 7 years.
Our goal today is to provide you with information on how these cuts have impacted Green River.
Green River College has budgets at individual fund levels. Examples of these funds include our capital budget, financial aid budget, associated student body budget, and our bookstore budget. The discussion for today is regarding our college's general fund budget, which includes the operating revenue and expenses associated with the core mission of the college. In terms of revenue, the general fund, this is looking at the general fund budget history over the last about 7 years. In 2008, 2009, approximately 67% of our revenue came from the state general fund. That has declined to about 49% of the budget in our last 14-15 budget year. During this same time period, the operating fee budget, which is the portion of the student tuition, has increased from 21% to 28%. The general fund also includes revenue from sources such as international, running start, and our grants and contracts overhead. In the past years, we have been much more dependent upon our reserve fund to balance our general fund budget. You might notice that has increased from about 3.8% in 2008-09 to approximately 9.1% in this last fiscal year.
This slide shows our general fund expenditures by program. You'll see that instruction makes up 56% of our general fund expenditures. Those include things like direct instruction, the library, the tutor center. You also see that plant operations is 15.2%. That includes things like the electricity, the grounds of the college, maintenance. Institutional support includes such things as
accounts payable, accounts receivable, payroll, the institutional management account, those functions that it takes behind the scenes to support both our instruction and our student affairs activities.
You see the student affairs activities are around 11.5% of the general fund. These would include things like financial aid, admissions, advising, those things that support students throughout their college experience here at Green River.
Now, looking at the same expenditure budgets in terms of type of expenditures, you'll note that in 13-14, about 81% of our expenditures fall in the category of salary and benefits. The next biggest category would be goods and services, and to note within that goods and services category, the biggest expense would be our utility budget. And then you can see that the expenditure levels drop off fairly quickly. An item to note there would be the debt service. One might think that that category appears fairly large for an institution our size. That actually includes about a $2 million payment that Green River College has on its books associated with the Salish building. The State Board for Community College Education supports that through an allocation directly to the college for that total amount.
The other thing I would point out is 2.8% of this is going to equipment. In the last decade or so, we've put a lot of our equipment expense on the capital funds that we've received for new buildings and remodels. So that is probably less than other colleges would have towards their general fund. This slide talks about our FTE targets and enrollment. You'll see within our state enrollment, our target from the state, they're funding us at 5,250 FTEs. But in terms of enrollment this last year, we had 4,824 FTEs. You'll see in worker retraining that the goal from the state was 446, and we had 411 FTEs. In the middle there you see the total of the state and worker retraining FTEs. What the state does is if a school doesn't reach their target, is below 96% of their target, they rebase the college, meaning they will take FTE monies away and assign a new level. They look at a 2-year average to determine whether the school needs to be rebased or not. You'll also see on this slide that the targets for Running Start and Academic International programs. This slide, you'll see the relationship between our budgeted FTEs and our actual enrollment. And you'll see that in several years in the past, we exceeded our target. And when we exceed our target, we're able to access our enrollment and get some additional revenue from the state. And you'll see in 2010, 2011, 2012, that was the case. And then, starting back in 2013, we started to decline below our target, and we don't have the opportunities now to apply for some additional funding. We're actually at the point where we potentially could get rebased as a college.
And in this particular slide, this is looking at fill rate, or the average number of students in a class. So you can see over the years that has varied. And in the years when we've had the excess enrollment that Derek was just talking about, we actually had much higher fill rates in our classes because we had more students. And what's happened most recently, as our decline in enrollments, we've still offered roughly the same number of sections, which means that our fill rate per section has dropped significantly, meaning that we have carried on our books additional classes that have not been filled or filled to capacity, which results in additional costs without the associated revenue that goes along with that. And this particular slide starts to get at what our current problem is. Looking at the green bars on this, the green bars represent the revenue that we have to support the general fund budget. And so you can see that the green bars are consistently less than what the red bars are. The red bars representing our ongoing operational expense. So this is the problem that we are faced with in these current times when we are not currently receiving the revenue at the same level as our expenditures.
And this would be similar to if you had your budget at home. If you're taking in less than you're spending, then you have a problem. You're probably running up your credit cards. Potentially, if you're in this situation, you'd be having serious issues, and we are as a college. And the board has asked us to start turning this around so we balance our revenue and expenses.
And this slide might seem a little bit busy or a little bit confusing, but the red bars on this line represent the same red bars that you saw in the previous graph. The red bars represent using our reserve funds to handle our regular ongoing operational costs. The blue bars on this one are actually a good thing. It represents using our reserves to do one-time items. So in terms of an analogy similar to what Derek had just explained, the red bars might represent where I'm buying my groceries out of my savings account on a regular annual basis, where the blue bars might be where my wash machine broke and I need to buy a new wash machine. So in fact, the blue bars are a good thing on here, so we're able to use our reserve funds to handle our one-time unique expenditures, where the red lines are basically not so good. We're constantly drawing out of our reserve to handle ongoing operational expenses.
So this last slide kind of sums up our whole general fund projected status for the next budget cycle. You'll see our total revenue coming in from the state. Remember, that was both domestic students and worker enrollments. Operating fees, that would be a portion of tuition that comes back to the college we use towards general fund. Parts of tuition also go to other things such as financial aid, an innovation fund that goes back to the state, a building innovation fund that also goes to the state for distribution, and also funds for ASB at the colleges. But the biggest share of tuition comes into this operating fee that you're seeing in the general fund. And then all other revenue, the $6.2 million, is coming in from sources such as international programs, Running Start, a little bit of overhead of grants and other things. So then you'll see our total anticipated revenue for 15-16 is a little bit less than 14-15, about $2 million less at $39.1 million. And you'll see that our total anticipated expenditures are 44.9. So again, we're continuing that cycle of more expenditures than the anticipated revenue coming in. So at the very bottom, you see the shortfall of $4.4 million for 14-15 and projecting a shortfall in 15-16 of $5.7 million. So this is a first part in the process of talking to you about our budget. We set up an email that if you have questions or comments, you can email us at budget@greenriver.edu. In the coming weeks, we'll have more recordings about, well, what do we plan to do about this and other things. So stay tuned. Thank you for listening.